What's up everyone, I'm Twisted. The second act of the Noxian season has been all about the history of Noxus. History that we already knew for quite some time, but this act is giving us more context and more details about it. To promote this act, we've been getting some animated trailers with a very cool style. However, the ones we got before didn't really get the gears in my head turning that much. Don't get me wrong, there were some cool details. For example, the first one hints that Mordekaiser might have built the Immortal Bastion in the image of what he thought the Hall of Bones looked like, which is pretty cool, but overall not enough for me to make a video about it. However, the new one that we got actually piqued my interest, so that's what we'll be looking at today. But as I said, all of these trailers are promoting the new act, be it skins or a champion update, they are all connected in terms of narrative. So before jumping into the new cinematic, let's quickly see what the other two were about, because knowing that is actually important in order to understand the new one. The first cinematic showed us Sahn-Uzal before his first death, before he returned to the world of the living as Mordekaiser. It's narrated by him as he tells the story of how he built a kingdom for himself in hopes of appeasing his gods and entering the Hall of Bones after he died. However, this didn't happen, there was no Hall of Bones, and so Sahn-Uzal refused to stay dead and came back as Mordekaiser, taking matters into his own hands and building himself the kingdom he was quote-unquote denied. In the second one, we get a speech from Darius during the Grand Reckoning, an event happening after he returned from the Freljord. This speech is about Noxian history, their legacy, how they are all about triumph, defiance and sacrifice, and strength above all. This cinematic is all about how Noxians see themselves, and the connection with the previous one is that the Noxians don't know that their ideals are nothing but a pale imitation of Sahn-Uzal's. Their values are a distilled version of his. Now that we have this context, let's dive into the newest cinematic, narrated by LeBlanc. You will notice that the color scheme here changes to feature a lot more blues, a contrast to the reds from the previous cinematics. It starts with LeBlanc facing the Noxian crest, which makes sense since she's about to make a speech about the region itself. We can tell that she's in the same room, or at least using the same magic we saw in the season cinematic. Before she speaks, we can even hear some whispers, just like in that one, and she controls this magic with her fingers as well. LeBlanc begins by explaining what the modern perception of Noxus is. We see the Immortal Bastion, and we can hear some ravens in the background. Beneath the fortress is a spiraling tower. Now, she's going to show us 3 moments from Noxian history. The first is when together, the Noxii tribes defeated Mordekaiser. This isn't new lore, but we got a visual of it for the first time in the Atakan comic. Then she mentions how the tribes survived the Rune Wars. We also knew about this. They hid inside the Immortal Bastion, and once the wars were over, they were more united than ever. No longer Noxii tribes, now just Noxians. And the final moment we see is Sion fighting Jarvan I. This is one of the first battles between the Demacians and Noxians. This moment looks exactly how it was described in Sion's bio. Sion dropped his axe and, with a final burst of strength, tore the king's crown from his head with one hand, clamping the other around his throat. This shot also confirms that Sion's newest skin is indeed canon. We come back to the spiraling tower as the camera descends, deep beneath the Immortal Bastion. We see LeBlanc, surrounded by what look like chess pieces. In front of her we see a pedestal with a Medarda crest, in specific Ambessa's version of it. Notice the small inner star. She drops a rose on it, so perhaps this is Ambessa's grave or a memorial of her. Either way, this is clearly related to her death, especially with the rose withering. From Arcane and the season cinematic, we know that LeBlanc was interested in Mel, but Ambessa's novel also gives us a bit more context. Skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid spoilers. Are you gone? No? Well, first, LeBlanc wanted to take control of the Medarda family, which makes sense. Controlling noble houses is one of the many ways the Black Rose controls Noxus. On top of this, Mel's biological father was a powerful mage and a member of the Rose. He hoped to keep his daughter hidden from them, but as we know, that didn't work out. Also, he sacrificed himself to help Ambessa, so the Rose lost one of their powerful mages because of her. Going back to the cinematic, here is where the twist begins. Remember, so far we've seen Noxian history from the perspective of the Noxians themselves. We're going back to the 3 moments we saw earlier, this time seeing how LeBlanc manipulated things behind the scenes. We see that the tribes alone didn't defeat Mordekaiser. It was thanks to LeBlanc and Vladimir that the anchors of his soul were severed. This has been known to us for a long time, but we also saw it in Atakan's comic. We see that behind the walls souls of the immortal bastion, it was the Black Rose that protected the fortress and the tribes from the calamities of the Rune Wars. A couple interesting things to mention here. First, these Black Rose mages have the same designs from the Atakan comic, and we also saw them in Sahn-Uzal cinematic. Second, this looks exactly like the cataclysm we saw in the Call of Power cinematic during Rise's flashback. Both the magic swirls and the buildings are identical. This makes sense since that flashback was set during the Rune Wars, and this might be around the same location since the place we see in the flashback is likely the village of Com, which was located in what is now modern Noxus. In the third moment, we now see a Demacian soldier blocking the other ones as Sahn kills Jarvan. Here we learn that the Rose was behind Sahn's victory, as this soldier is wrapped in their magic. I'm pretty sure this is brand new lore as well. Before, we just knew that he won, but we didn't know that the Black Rose was involved. Sahn died here just to be later resurrected by the Rose, so I wonder if his death was also planned. Here we get many familiar faces, with the implication being that the Rose might have been manipulating their paths without them knowing, or most likely these are the Rose's targets, their enemies. We see Darius, notice the hair and scars, and Draven. The paint on his left eye makes it obvious it's him. Draven helped Swain take down Darkwill, which was being controlled by the Black Rose, and Darius joined Swain, agreeing to rule by his side. Then we see Swain himself with a raven on his shoulder. We know that when he was younger, Swain actually exposed the Cabal, and he even thought he killed LeBlanc. Obviously he didn't, and later when he was fighting in Ionia, the Rose set things up so that he would die there. He didn't, and thanks to Realm's powers, he now rules over Noxus. Behind him is Katarina, her family being closely tied to the Rose as her parents and her siblings are part of the Cabal. She's also one of Swain's closest allies. Finally, we see Mel, whose connection to the Rose I already explained earlier. Then we get this beautiful shot of the giant tower deep beneath the immortal bastion, like the stem of a rose and the fortress its petals. Powerful symbolism here, the Rose being the source of the Noxus we know, the true heart of Noxus. The first cinematic showed us Sahn-Uzal, the conqueror of the Noxii tribes, the father of Noxus in a way. Then, in the second cinematic, we saw the modern Noxians and what they stand for, their ideals being nothing but a pale imitation of Sahn-Uzal's way of living. In the third cinematic, we once again see a glimpse of how Noxians see themselves and their own history, just before the reveal that the Rose has been behind it all. Noxians don't fully grasp how much the things they believe in came from the tyrant who ruled over them and or from the Rose. Side note here, some of you might be wrongly assuming this is a retcon, but that's not the case. This cinematic only shows us that the modern Noxians don't know the full picture when it comes to their history. LeBlanc being behind Mordekaiser's defeat is not a new addition to the lore. The Noxians just don't know about this. They think the tribes alone defeated him. And the same applies to the other events. We knew that the Noxii tribes survived the Rune Wars, and we knew Sahn killed Jarvan I. Now we just know that the Rose was involved in these events, which is not surprising because we know from LeBlanc's bio that she's been manipulating history ever since Mord was defeated. But honestly, the coolest reveal in the cinematic is the underground tower beneath the immortal bastion. We already knew there was something underneath it. From LeBlanc's story, a great well of souls, plunging down into the bedrock of Noxus, far deeper than the physical dimensions of the bastion should even allow. This is where the Rose hid Mordekaiser's armor. I assume this has to be the tower we see, or at least this well of death is somewhere in this tower. I wonder if this was built entirely following Mordekaiser's plan, or if part of it was built in secret, without him knowing. Either way, I can't wait to learn more about it. There are still some questions left unanswered from the season cinematic, like why was Mel represented by this beast, and what was the symbol we saw at the end, though LeBlanc's voice lines might just be answering that last question, but I'll leave that for another video. If I missed anything, let me know down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and you can always change your mind later. I'm Twisted and I'll see you guys in the next one.